Last week's episode of, I guess, Elam Manos. I don't like saying episode. 1 second. Let me get my iPad. Technology's hard. I'm old. Give me a break. Last week we started a series on Joshua, and we talked about what God was doing with the Israelites, and he led them through this miracle where they walked through the Jordan River, and they walked on dry land. And the main point of the whole story was sometimes we need to act before God will enable. Sometimes we will step into things, and in the story, the priests, the holy people, they walked first. They went first. They were stable where they were. God stopped the river way downstream, and they did this amazing miracle, and then they walked through, and it was cool, and everyone walked through like, yo, that was so cool. Have you ever been a part of something where you just want to tell more people about it afterwards? Or like you've seen something and it's awesome? Like, any big movie fans here? No one likes movies? No wonder it's a dying industry. Oh, some people over here. Have you ever seen a movie that you just love and you're like, I just want to tell people about it, but you don't want to spoil it, so like you wait for your friend or your brother who you want to talk to about it, and you get really excited about it? Or maybe something great happens to you. Maybe your hockey team wins. Like, let's say they're playing against another team. It's a Tuesday night and they win by like 8 goals or 8-4, and you just want to tell everyone. I'm making fun of Josiah a little bit because that happened last week. And you just want to get excited. That's kind of what's going on here. They experience this incredible thing, and they're just jacked about it. And like, I can get pretty ADD sometimes, as you guys have probably put together. And sometimes when I get excited about things, I want to tell people about things. But sometimes when like things that I don't like happen, I kind of want to shut them out of my memory. And I had a really funny conversation with a couple people just kind of in the atrium afterwards. And I think it was Bryden and a couple other people. They're like, Pastor Ben, like, you've got a lot of tattoos. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware. I was there when most of them were done. And they're like, I was there when all of them were done. That'd be impressive, though. There's probably a market for that somewhere. Like, oh, I'm busy. You do the tattoo, just have it show up on me later. That'd be great. But they asked me about, have you ever had someone kind of give you trouble for being a pastor with tattoos? Like, is that a thing? And I thought about it, and to be honest, I hadn't. I haven't had people kind of be like, oh, like well, at least not to my face. I guarantee you, in every church I've worked at, there's been at least some sweet old lady that really means well. I'm like, we have to pray for that new pastor. I saw a part of his sleeve, and I don't think it's permanent marker. I think that wouldn't come off. And so if we see him in heaven, he's only going to have one arm, because that's what they tell you. The tattooed part doesn't make it in. That's not true, I hope. I don't know for sure. I'm pretty confident that it's not. But it got me kind of thinking of tattoos and why we get them. And I do really like tattoos. This one was done by an artist in Toronto that I really think is awesome. And he put on Instagram that his books were opening up. And like, he was a friend of my cousin's. And so that's how I kind of got to know him. And his books are opening up in the same gap that I'm going to be visiting some friends in Toronto. I'm like, oh, maybe I can get in to see Michael. I can get some more tattoos. So he's the type of guy that his books fill in like a day, or like a couple hours. Like, he's got a lot of clients, and they opened up. I sent the email through. I got through on the thing, and he sent me this like new blurb. He's like, hey, just so you know, things have changed since the last time you were here. We only accept cash now. And it's like, good for you. You don't have to pay tax. He's like, my going rate is $500 an hour. And at that point, I just stopped reading, because that's a lot of money. That's a significant investment. And like, I think tattoos are cool. I like them. But like, if I want to spend like $500 an hour is ludicrous to me. Like, I didn't spend even close to that on anything. It's not quite worth it to me to get something that I want to remember forever that's going to cost that much. But I was thinking about like, is there anything that I would get tattooed on me for $500 an hour? And I'm like, probably not. Like, and then I started thinking about, why do I get tattoos? And like, I came up with 3 reasons, and I'm not doing a whole message on tattoos, but I promise this will make sense in a bit. Someone's like, I was really wanting to know, is he going to talk about Leviticus where they say it's bad? No. I was wondering, like, why do people get tattoos? And the one thing is, I think a lot of people get them because they look cool. That's why I think mine look cool. You can make fun of me. I did have someone say, when you're old, your tattoos are going to look funny. I'm like, yeah, but we're all going to look funny when we're old anyway. So at least someone will look at me and be like, that guy used to think he looked cool, or something like that. The reason number 2 is because they mean something to someone, and that's true. There's a lot of that. And that kind of ties into reason number 3, which is they want to remember something forever. Something happens that's so monumentous, so important, that they want it to be on them forever, right? Most people that I know that get tattoos, unless they're an exceptionally ridiculous individual, get things that they want to be reminded of, that they want to see things all the time. For me, so I got this tattoo. It's a sword with wings on it, and it represents like the sword of the Spirit, right? And it's kind of battle worn. It's got these like scars in it, but it's still worn. So to me, that represents the Scripture, the Bible, right? It's been through a lot, and it's going to continue to stand, right? I've got another tattoo of a lion up here, and it says Proverbs 28:1, which is the wicked flee, though no one pursues them, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. And I want to remember that when I deal with things in my life. I want to remember what it means to be righteous. And so I have those tattoos on me. And the truth is, we can go through huge lengths to remember things. Like, how many people are currently studying right now, like our current students in this room? A good amount? Like, how many times have you given up sleep to study? Most nights, I'm willing to bet. Like, as a Bible college student, I fully understand that my course load was nowhere near that of anyone that was like in engineering or in like nursing or in like even in English or like any like most degrees, to be completely honest. But like even myself, there were times like I want to remember what's going on in this course, so I will pass, so I will go through all this effort. We're going to talk about remembering things today, and we're going to go to Joshua chapter 4, and this is verses 1 all the way to verse 7, and we're going to read this together. When the whole nation, this is right after, like literally, like next episode of the last week, they were crossing the Jordan. This is like immediately after that. So it said, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over and put them down in the place where you will stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you in the future when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan, and when it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you that you love us. Thank you that you want to speak to us tonight. And God, I pray that we can walk away learning something, God, and bring some practices into our own lives that will just help us connect with you. So I read this passage and it kind of breaks it down. And there's some things that we can miss here. And I'm going to be kind of talking in a slightly different style than I normally do. We're going to break this scripture down. The first thing when I read this is like, why 12? Joshua is told by God to get 12 people. And then, again, context here. They're pulling these stones up, and it's very clear in the scripture why they're doing it. They're doing it so they would remember. Good night. See you guys all later. No, there's more than that. Someone's like, yes. Josiah's like, I should have locked up tonight. We're already done. No, I'm kidding. They're doing it so they can remember, but there's some specific things here that we can miss. The first thing that they talk about is it says, get 12 people, and 12 men, one from each tribe, one from each stone, or one stone for each tribe. There's an important reason there. You see, the Israeli people at the time, the people of God, the Hebrews, the Jews, they were cut into 12 tribes. There was 12 different segments. These tribes worked almost as family units, as almost like provinces. They had their own little leadership structures within each. They had their own oral traditions. They had their own part to play. They interacted with each other a little bit, but they very much kept to themselves in a broad sense, especially as the nation of Israel would move on. The reason why they wanted one of each tribe is because they wanted every single person to realize that God had moved individually in their lives and in their families. They didn't want to leave it up to anyone to say, well, God only moved for the Levites. They only moved for the people of Judah. They only moved for the Benjamites. No, everyone was involved in that. Every single person. God wanted to make sure that all of the families in Israel would remember that. So he picked one from each so that they could tell the story. And like, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm going to tell a story to my kids, I'm going to embellish a little bit. I'm probably going to make sure those guys, they carried a stone, but the stone that I carried was like 5 times as big. And they'd bring it up. But by doing that, each person had a stake in that. Each tribe would understand. So when they went back, they could look and say, hey, that's where my ancestor did this. That's where my life was affected. So they called them up, and each man went. And then there's this really weird part that always stood out to me weird. It said, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of tribes of the Israelites. Josiah, can you help me out here? I asked Josiah to help me with this real quick. Give it up for Josiah. Usually he plays on the drums. Now, I told Josiah what I was going to do. I changed my mind. I'm going to do something different. Don't worry. Josiah, can you can you carry me from here to like over there?
Over there?
Yeah. How do you think the best way to carry me would be? You think so? Yeah. But I'm not going to help.
Okay.
So I'm just dead weight. So how are you going to carry? How are you going to do it?
Let's still try it.
Okay, go for it.
Well, you're not even going to get on me?
Just said those words. How are you going to carry me? This is romantic. Please don't drop me. Oh, look at him go. Give it up for Josiah. That's not what I thought he was going to do. Here's what I thought he was going to do. Stand for a second. Did we get that on video? That better make it to the Instagram. Future Bailey, when you're editing this is the part you want to show. Here's what I thought he was going to do. I thought he was be dead weight for a second. I thought he was just going to, like throw me over his shoulder. Dead weight. Don't be like standing firm. Be limp. There we go. Just like this. Because the truth is, everyone say hi to Josiah. The truth is, if you're instructed to carry something over your shoulder, you probably can't carry it with just your hands. I'm going to put this mic down. You know how expensive these mics are. You're on the worship team.
Thought you were going to drop?
I'm not going to drop you. I was going to regrip. Now I got to regrip. So just got a sandbag. We're going to try this one more time. If I were to lift you up, just lean over my shoulder. Ready? There we go. Dead weight. Oh, you're so slippery. Did you run here? You're fine. There you go. The truth is, hopefully a rock wouldn't be this difficult. You feeling good? Now he's like actually doing dead weight. If you want to carry something that's heavier than so we can carry hands, you want to throw it over your shoulder. Give it up for Josiah. Now I don't need to work out today. That was really silly. Why did he do that? Here's why. A, I was really hoping he'd try to carry me over his shoulder. B, these people went through great lengths of lifting heavy rocks. They didn't just drag them. They actually went out of their way to lift them, put them over their shoulders, and carry them out. It would have been rather difficult. Have you ever done something where you're like, I'm never doing that again, that was difficult? Like this. When I was a kid, I used to do a lot of landscaping for my mom. And there was these rose bushes that she wanted me to tear out. And at this point, I was like, I can do that. I'm like 15. I can weed gardens or whatever. Has anyone ever tried to pull a rose bush out of the ground? I gotta catch my breath, Josie. You're heavier than I thought. Has anyone ever tried to do that with a rose bush? Yes? They're incredibly difficult to do. They're like entangled in thorns. Their roots go almost as deep as the bushes do. They're a huge pain. I tried for hours, and I just gave up. My mom was like, he's just lazy. And then she tried. She couldn't do it. Then she went to Google this new thing that was just invented back then. And she realized that rose bushes were difficult to work with. So I learned in that moment, for my memory of trying to do something that was that difficult, that I'm not going to try that again. So later on in my life, when I was working as a groundskeeper, my bosses were like, hey, we got some rose bushes. Can you take care of them? I was like, no. Sorry, I can't. You need a bulldozer. You need a truck. You're going to figure it out. And they're like, okay. And they did. Because when something's very difficult, you often remember going through it. Do you know why I wanted to be very difficult and ridiculous with Josiah here? Because chances are, you might not remember everything that I say tonight, but I'm willing to bet you'll remember Josiah kicking that music stand over. I'm willing you're going to bet like Josiah, all 140 pounds of him, running like 220 pounds of me across the stage. Because it's a display of something that you'll kind of catch and remember. And what Joshua is commanding the Israelites to do here is, hey, in the midst of this miracle, and other Josh, if you want to get to the keys, that'd be cool. Did you break my iPad? No, it's good. In the midst of the miracle of walking across the Jordan, here's what God wanted the Israelites to do. He wanted them to remember. He wanted them to do something different. He wanted them to do something ridiculous. He wanted to do something that everyone could look at and be like, remember when they struggled with those big rocks? Remember when they did that? And he said, this will be a sign that you can tell to your kids, your parents, or their kids, your grandkids. You can have this conversation for generations to come. You can say, hey, this crazy pile of rocks right here, That's when God did something. He did something incredible in this moment. Honestly, my hope for you is if you walk away from here and you're like, no matter what happens in your life, you can remember at one point, like, do you remember that time when then that weird pastor wearing like the ripped jeans, like really struggled to carry that guy across the stage, and that guy just kind of ran with him? That was crazy. What was he talking about? He was talking about remembering God, and then maybe something will trigger in your mind and you'll remember things. You see, the truth is, God didn't only want people to remember what was going on. He wanted them to put effort into it. He could have said, grab a bunch of pebbles, grab some stones, grab a handful. He said, no, put them over your shoulder. Carry them. Walk with them. Go through the effort to remember. Get it tattooed on your heart. Hey, this is what God has done here. It's funny, like, I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm going to sit down for a second if I can. Hopefully I'm still in frame. Am I still in frame, Bridget? Sorry, YouTube. Is that a thumbs up? Awesome, thank you. You ever have someone like memory's weird in our culture. You ever have someone say something that really hurt? Rhetorical question, you don't need to answer. That can stick with you forever. You can have people say, hey, I think you're great at this. You can be encouraged 100 times, but if someone says one thing, that negative comment could float and it could have free real estate in your mind for a very, very long time, because our culture, our world is incredible at remembering the damage that's done to us. Because sometimes remembering the good things actually takes effort. Sometimes we need to train ourselves to do this. We need to put the effort in. We need to be told, hey, remember the good things. Right? Like the whole self-help industry would not exist if people could remember the nice things that other people said about them. All it is saying, hey, you've done it. You can do it. And if we remember that, you would just read one self-help book. You never need to read another one. The truth is, sometimes remembering what God has done in our lives is difficult. It takes effort, but it's unbelievably important. You actually need to learn to train yourself to see what God is doing in your life while He's in the midst of doing it, and do that in a way that later on you can tell people about it. In that moment, none of the people that carried the rocks were the people that were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. That's important. There wasn't a member of every single tribe represented in carrying the Ark of the Covenant. So they could have easily said, yeah, God worked in their lives, but not in mine. But Joshua was like, no, every tribe, go back, get a stone, because you need to know that you're as much a part of this miracle as anyone else. And when generations look on, you need to be able to point to what God did in your life. You need to realize what's going on. Did you know, guys, that if we look at the current state of our lives, even though there's a lot of stuff that's going on, if we learn to recognize the miracle that God is already doing and find a way to solidify that and remember it and tell other people about it, it will train us to continue to look for those miracles and to have more faith in God when we need it. I kind of joked that I don't need to go to the gym today, and I am kind of tired, so maybe I do. But one of the big things that happens in fitness, and anyone that works out can tell you this, one of the first things they'll tell you to do is take progress photos. And it's not out of vanity. It's not out of like, oh, look at how good I look. Oh my goodness, I'm so strong now. No, it's so you can see how far you've come, because exercise, like faith, is an incremental increase. No one will work out, like we've all seen that meme or whatever, of a guy like, I did 100 crunches, do I have abs yet? And it's like, no, you don't have abs yet. You don't see the day-to-day, but it's incremental. And if you don't notice it, if you don't train yourself to look for the progress, you will miss the progress, and then you'll give up. But if you've got that progress photo of where you started and where you end off, you can be like, well, I've actually come a really long way. Listen, if you put the grind and if you put the effort to look for the ways that God is moving in your life right now, it'll build your faith. It'll give you the ability to step into more things. So why are we talking about this, right? And we're going to talk a lot more about this next week, a little bit more. But the truth is, it's easy to walk away from God if you're convinced that He's not walking with you. It's easy to walk away from God if you're convinced that He hasn't been with you. But because if you're not looking for it, if you're not paying attention, if you're not giving credit where credit is due, when God does incredible things in your life, it's easy to be like, He doesn't really care about me. Like, I dare you to feel like God doesn't care about you as you're living in Canada, a nation that will likely, that in our lifetimes, has not seen war that's come to our doorstep, where you know you can probably go to sleep tonight and there's not going to be a bomb that's going to blow up over your head. I know it's an ugly example right now, but I dare you to think that God doesn't have interest in you because you didn't choose to be born here. So try to be upset about the little things in the light of that. And it's not a guilt trip. It's saying, hey, we actually have a lot to be thankful for. And when we can train ourselves to look at the little wins, then we can be ready for the big ones. It's hard to walk away from God when you're like, oh, what has God done for me? Well, you made it this far in life. He's walked with you. He's been faithful, whether you realize it or not. Whether you believe in him, he knows that he's ordering your steps. He's keeping you alive. The circumstances that are good in your life come from him. But we don't attribute that to him, so we can maybe walk away later. But not only do we want to remember so that we don't walk away from him, there's another crazy thing about this story, and like I said, we're going to get to this next week. But one of the main reasons why every single Israelite needed to have their faith bolstered in this moment by crossing the Jordan is because Jericho was on the horizon. And if you're not familiar with the story because you didn't watch VeggieTales, that's okay. But we're going to talk about it next week. There was this fortified city called Jericho. This impenetrable fortress that was the next thing that the Israelites had to do. And every single one of them had a part to play in it. And if they didn't all follow through, if they didn't all have faith, and we're going to talk about this next week, if they didn't all have faith in what God wanted to do in the plan that didn't necessarily make sense, it wouldn't have worked. Guys, if we don't learn to see how God is moving in our everyday lives, if we don't learn to remember and to put the effort in and to train ourselves to track the progress that God is walking us through, it's going to be a lot harder for us to step into things that are a lot bigger than we are. It's going to be a lot more difficult when we're in the need of a miracle to believe for it because we haven't been watching what God's been doing. We haven't been remembering. It's funny, and I'll kind of close with this because we're going to end a little early today. I don't know if it's early or not. I'm not looking at a timer, but my daughter's cute, man. She really is. She's at this stage where, and like, there's something cool going on in our kids' min, by the way. If you want to volunteer in kids' ministry, you should. But there's something cool going on in our kids' ministry because she'll come and talk to me. She's like, Daddy, Jesus says we need to be friends with everyone. I'm like, that's so sweet. I used to be like, Ellie, who's your best friend? She'd be like, Noah. And that was a little boy from Milton. Now, if I'm like, who's your best friend? No one. What do you mean? Because Jesus wants to be friends with everyone. I'm like, oh, that's so adorable. But she's in this cute phase where she asks Jesus for everything. So we got her this climber for the house because we live in Saskatoon. It's very cold. She's got a lot of energy. I want her to get out inside. I don't want to go outside. We got her this climber. And the other night at bedtime, we were praying. And she's like, Dear Jesus, thank you so much for the climber. I love it. And I love you, Jesus. And I'm like, I paid for the climber. Like, come on. No, but like, and then she's like, I thank Jesus for the climber. And I'm like, that's awesome. Because she's in that point of trial where like everything good must come from Jesus, I guess. Guys, if we can learn to thank God for what he's doing in our lives, even in the small things, when we face the Jerichos, it'll be a lot easier to walk with him. So I want to try something really practical here. If you can, and it's gonna be different for everyone, but I want you guys to kind of focus. I'm gonna sit because A, the smoke is kind of blocking my view right now, and B, I'm still tired from carrying Josiah. But I want you guys, and I'm gonna pray in a moment, and I want you guys to maybe take 5 to 10 minutes to either, and you can do it in a group of people if you want to be with some of your friends, or if you want to just pull out your phone and do it on your own, do it on your own. I want you to take inventory of the things that God has done in your life in the past week, month, year, day. And if it's something right now where something popped in your head, you're like, oh, that was good, but it wasn't God. If we believe in God that is sovereign over all things, that is working in all circumstances, I actually bet that it is. And I want to challenge you guys as a group, in your group of friends, in your relationships, to get used to sharing good things that God is doing in your life. Because you know what's going to happen? That'll stir other people's faith. That'll show other people that there's something going on that's cool, and it'll encourage them. Something we do every single week with the Next Gen team here. So for those that don't know, I don't just do young adults. I direct our whole Next Gen team here. The first thing we do is we do 2 wins and a loss from the week. So the loss is so we can learn from it. The wins are, because I'm tired of most people in church, all our conversations are about how much the church sucks, and that really annoys me. So I want to bring some positivity, and I want to train my team to be actively looking for the things where God is doing something cool. Because if you seek, you will find. So here's what we're going to do. And I know this isn't the big ending with a worship song that we might have done last week or we're going to do next week. But I really want to challenge you guys. Take some time. And I'd love it if you'd share with someone else. You don't have to. I don't want to force social interaction. If you don't want to talk to someone, it's not my job to make you talk to people. But I actually want to challenge you guys to get into the habit of sharing what God is doing and then just celebrating in it together. So I'm going to pray. We're just going to take 5 minutes, and if you want to have conversations, take conversations. If you want to, you going to say something? He's got a mic? I was going to say, maybe he's got something really good to say. For those that don't know what's going on, I just saw Nathan walk up with a microphone, and I'm a little worried he's going to kick me off the stage. I'm going to pray. I'm going to challenge you guys. I know it might feel weird at first. It might feel awkward. It might be like trying to pick up a heavy, wet rock that's way too hard and you got to throw it up on your shoulder. It might be like trying to move Josiah across the stage and you might feel silly and awkward doing it. But that's okay. A little bit of awkwardness is 100% worth it. The first progress photo someone takes at the gym is always weird. The first step to learning to do a new skill is always awful. It's always strange. It's always awkward. But if you can train yourself to look for the things that God is doing, then you can actually begin to rely on them and realize that it's not up to you. It's not up to your strength. It's not up to your ability. And then you can do incredible things through God, and you can just watch him move in your life. So I'm going to pray. We're going to take 5 minutes, and then I got some announcements, and then we're going to just go hang out. Dear God, I pray over the next couple moments, God, that you just give us cool conversations. God, you remind us of the things that we're doing. God, even the things right now that some people's like, oh, that's small, that's insignificant. God, that we just write it down. God, that we almost look into the rivers where you've moved in our lives. We look into the mud and we try to find these things, whether they're big or small, God, and we put the effort in to train ourselves to remember what you're doing in our lives, God, so it's easier for us to walk forward and lean on you. In your holy name, I pray.